This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News, News-Free Dixie for the 21st century.
Hello.
Hey, Judge Brown, how you doing?
All right. What's up, man? What can I do for you?
You already know.
Other than what I already know about you.
I just want to get your commentary, man. People are asking, what judge think about what's going on?
Go ahead.
Yeah, people think about what you going on. They always ask me, what judge think about this? I mean, I get phone calls and
what's the topic? Fort Pillow?
Yeah, Fort Pillow, but also like the current stuff, like Obama, wrapping it up. He had his speech last night, and some other things, the Trump thing with the Russians, about the sex scandal that's supposed to be brewing with the fake news people.
Yes, sir.
How you doing? First of all, Happy New Year. We are glad you made it through 2016. It was a hell of a year. But I think 2017 going to be a better year for everybody. How you doing?
Well, I think it'll be a good year, and Happy New Year to you, young brother.
Yes, sir. So, I got to talk to you because people always ask me when I'm on the road, whether I be in Charleston or Atlanta or even in Memphis, what does Judge Joe Brown think about what's going on right now? Because people have really benefited from your commentary on our news platform, and people are very grateful. And people are demanding to see you on TV once again. They really want to see you on TV.
Yeah, that would be a good change. Time for a little bit of wisdom, maybe.
Okay, we definitely need that. I think people are looking for that. They're looking for some true elder wisdom, some guy with insight and so much more. So I want to ask you, we're talking about...
Wisdom is one. Wisdom is one. It's not given.
Yes, sir. I definitely agree with that. So you a man that has won a lot of wisdom, and people love when you dispense that wisdom and also a sense of morality and justice when it comes to certain things that affect our community. So I want to applaud you for being the stand-up guy you always been, Judge Brown. We appreciate that so much. And I want to ask you about your thoughts. First of all, there's so much stuff going on right now, but what are your thoughts? President Obama did a speech last night that got a lot of interesting feedback, a lot of very positive feedback, and some criticism. What are your thoughts about his speech? Did you hear the speech last night about his legacy?
Yes, I did. I am very disappointed in his administration. His last speech didn't make any difference. He had 8 years to use the window of opportunity to do something for the middle class and for the people that he is confused with being part of.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, what could he have done differently? Like, what would you suggest to him in terms of helping the middle class?
The speech?
Yeah.
The speech? Oh, well, forget the speech. It's like he had 8 years. One time he had the Congress and the Senate. Jobs, education, housing, opportunity, more appointments, particularly somebody black, for real black, on the U.S. Supreme Court, somewhere in there, and he just wasted it.
Imagine at the Supreme Court thing, because it's like the Republicans, they obstructed him on the last chance to replace Scalia. Do you think he did? He should have nominated a black person, like a black woman, to the Supreme Court?
Oh, as a show, but he should have nominated a black man his first year when he could have gotten anybody in. That Clarence Thomas is something of an embarrassment. The other thing is look, the person he did nominate, whose nomination has been held up, is a lifetime conservative Republican who's pro-big business, anti-affirmative action, anti-abortion, and has not done much to advance prisoners' rights for all of the wrongfully convicted black inmates. There are a lot of them that aren't, but there are some of them that are. He's always been anti-us. He's an old, long-term helper of Goldman Sachs. So what did he do? He didn't even do us righteous in that. Obamacare that everybody tooted, I don't think he should have ever let his name be associated with it, because I think it's a sorry embarrassment, that affordable health care thing that former senior Tennessee U.S. Senator Dr. Bill Frist, whose family founded Blue Cross Blue Shield, came up with that nonsense back in 2003, trying to put it across, but he couldn't. It's a sop for the medical insurance business and bad for the people.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the medical insurance company. Like, I look at Aetna, Aetna is the largest medical insurance company in America, but they built a
No,
business.
it's not. Blue Cross, Blue Shield, uh, Cigna, Aetna, all of them are basically caught up with being part of the conglomerate empire of Blue Cross, which was the first medical insurance company. They came out saying we are all about medical insurance, did a lot of early advertising hype with the unions at the time to get to be the insurance companies for the unions. It turned out to be a bad deal because then they ran with that and they tried to charge exorbitant prices for coverage and deliver little on it.
So say with Aetna, their background, how they built their company is troubling to me because like they used to sell insurance policies to slave owners on their slaves. So right there, I mean, they should be benefiting reparation. I mean, to me, healthcare should be like free, especially for black people.
Well, bottom line is what do you need private enterprise stuck in it anyway, unless it's an option?
Right.
Because if you've got a single payer run by the government, there's one big difference. But when you've got a function that can be covered by the government or a private enterprise is ingenious when they have to put their own money up. But in this case, it wouldn't be their own money.
Right.
And additionally, when it comes down to spending taxpayers' money, they have two considerations. They have to deal with production of the item, the cost, and they have to deal with profit for their stockholders. So when the government's in it, there's no profit consideration. It's just what does it cost to do it on a very, very large scale.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of that nonsense about the beauty of private enterprise is just hype put out by those who are vested in interest with private enterprise, and it's good for their business. See, That's the thing, not for us. And it's that they used to have little Abner, General Bull Moose. What's good for General Bull Moose is good for the USA, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What's good for General Motors is good for USA. What's good for big corporations is good for the USA. That ain't necessarily so.
Wow. So basically, like, Obama is a horrible negotiator. Oh, you say he's a horrible.
You know, we had such a big opportunity, and we got in there a chick flick matinee star with little experience, no background in mainland USA, and with the remotest connection to U.S. citizenship. He had no Black American legacy that could have guided him or that he could have been informed through in terms of his growing up. It was Indonesian and Keynesian. In other words, Kansian, I should say, from his mother being from Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Father was from Kenya, but, you know, tribesmen didn't have anything to do with his son's upbringing. So what did we get? A rich white guy.
With a tan, right. Like
with
Donald Trump.
Yeah, who's got more money than Donald Trump. Who's got more money than Donald Trump. Who's got an even more elite background that he grew up in. Whose family that he grew up in were oil barons.
Mm. Well, you know, Donald Trump trying to push a oil baron or executive as the Secretary of State, so there shouldn't be a conflict of interest, right? This guy.
Why worry about it? I think the most valuable thing is to see what's really there. You know, that emperor has no clothes thing.
Right.
Hillary was just more disguised and frou-frou and frills and nils put on top of something that was still rotten to the core.
But you think Hillary could have got in, like, it's like her obsession with her career was to get the universal health care thing. Well, you think she would have pushed in single payer or public option if she got in?
Look, Hillary Clinton is so bought off by high finance in investment banking that, you know, you're getting the enemy in there.
And so really, we should have no faith in elected office. Then, that's what you're telling us, especially at the high places.
And I have another thing too. What you are about for most of all of your adult life, you will show by the time you get 21. And by the time she was 21, she had a career working for racism, segregation, denial of integration, Republican Party, supporting a racist, Barry Goldwater, who pushed the race card and for supporting Richard Tricky Dick, I am not a crook Nixon in 1968 against LBJ.
Mm-hmm.
And said a lot of nasty things about black people being militant.
That's fascinating. And people can find out this stuff online, but yet people still it's like especially black people still have a love for Hillary Clinton.
They don't have a love for Hillary Clinton. She's just white mistress, and that's what they go for. They didn't even understand. And see, we're so ignorant about true issues. When we get to the point where we can participate in a political party, we treat it like a social club, like a sorority or something. Or I don't mean to insult the sororities. I'm not trying to do that. Or Thompson teens or something like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
right. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
We sort of abdicated our situation. The bottom line is, like I've said before, what has happened is that we've lost our window of opportunity as a minority. They've got new minorities, the Hispanic crowd, some that you need to pay serious attention to because they're threatening, and for being recipients of any degree of altruism or good feelings, it's become a non-ethnic minority, the LGBT crowd, which is something by choice. Now, is their right to be what they are, but, our time is past. And, when you get your foot in the door, you can't half step once you get on the other side of it. You got to do what you need to do to keep that door wide open. And our current faux homeboy just dropped the ball.
You know what's crazy? We in a reality TV society, and Barack Obama, like you say, he is a celebrity president, and he's in good with the black celebrities. But really, where is the black leadership for black folk? Where is the black agenda?
There is none. And when you start to develop real black leadership, this society, this media-dominated society, tries to suppress it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, even the Pope said something about it last month. He commented basically that the media is too concerned with trying to tear people down. So one of the main goals, aims, policies of modern mass media in America is to find somebody that's a straight man, black or white, and earn higher ratings by tearing him down. So all of the inquiring minds can satisfy their fascinations with wanting to know the latest scandal.
Let me ask you this. Speaking of I guess, you talked about a little bit about the gay agenda on my show, and people really took hold of what you were saying when we did an interview. I don't get your thoughts about Kim Burrell, the gospel singer, and the fallout from her, comments about gay people, homosexuality in the black church, and how basically, people disinvited her from shows like Ellen, and she lost her radio show. I don't know. Are you familiar with that clip of her talking about homosexuality in the black church?
Yes, I am. That's her opinion, First Amendment opinion. She has a right to it.
Mm-hmm.
And Ellen DeGeneres, of course, Ellen DeGeneres was the poster child for LGBT. She married that woman and came out years ago and ruined the sitcom, which is that she was involved with, which is the only production she's been associated with that hasn't been an abject failure. See, look what they do with her. Every single show she's had has been a ratings flop, has been canceled. But the season won't even be over before the industry will give her another show. See, nobody listens. She's not a superstar. She has low ratings, but they hype it up and tell you that she does.
Yeah, she get access to the president and the first lady too, so she got connections to get her access to people like the president of the United States, although her ratings are not that great.
Well, yeah, look. I don't have any problem with helping out the gay thing, LGBT thing. Okay, fine.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't help us out. What did you hear him say about helping out the black cause in 8 years? Nothing. Did he talk about the undereducation of African Americans? Did he really talk anything about making any reform through the Justice Department to what was going on in the inner cities? Did he really sick the U.S. attorney's offices on some of this deplorable stuff that goes on in our inner cities? in the name of law and order. Not that we don't need it, but some of it, is just deplorable on how much, what do they call it, collateral damage occurs as a result of what they do.
What's interesting about him is when it comes to Chicago, he's more concerned about the Chicago Cubs than he is about black folks who live in Chicago. It seems like.
Of course he is, because he never had any contact with them. The only thing he did most of the time he was in Chicago with that old Republican law firm he and Michelle worked for was to see how to trick black folk out of their homestead deeds and all of these rundown, godforsakenly decrepit structures that they renovated in central Chicago for one of the firm's clients.
Mm-hmm. So this is an interesting thing. Like last year they had almost 800 black folks die in Chicago. And this is much, to me, is a part of his legacy as anything else, because if your former chief of staff is the mayor of Chicago and you claim that it's your hometown, why wouldn't that be a special project for you to tackle what's going on in your hometown? And it's not a systemic thing because it's happening in only one part of your hometown, supposedly. It's not happening all over Chicago. It's contained.
See, if I walk through Chicago,
mm-hmm.
I would see what I saw in South Central LA, what I see in South Memphis, North Memphis, what I see in parts of D.C., what I see in parts of Harlem,
mm-hmm.
what I see in other hoods in America. And I'd say, this is what I would do, which is the same kind of thing I've been trying to do for, 30-some years. But you see, he walks in there, and he, like I said, he only looks like us. He doesn't have a clue what he's looking at. And less of a clue than the typical white guy would have, because at least the white guys lived in homeland America, and while growing up had to worry about, was he in the wrong neighborhood, and make sure your gas tank has got some gas in it so you don't get stuck having to get off the freeway, the wrong exit, at the wrong time of night, and run into one of our young gangster brothers.
Right. So can you name one positive thing he's done for black folks? I mean, anything that Obama in the 8 years in being in office, anything you can think of?
Well, when we're given a cause and when we think we're going to die, we can go about the business of getting it together with some kind of focus. But, I guess too many things in our community are designed to, intended to, and actually do diffuse all of our energy. Our entertainments, our churches, our gossip, our social structure, the fact that we've got an operational matriarchy instead of a traditional family. I mean, all kinds of stuff really destroys our energies. Brother gets mad enough to do something and his wife hounds him about going to church, and then he's supposed to be caught up in that catharsis on Sunday morning, and he can, instead of being so angry he wants to do something, he feels better for the next week.
Mm-hmm.
His wife is fighting with him as to who's going to be the man in the house, and raising too many of her sons. Once she ran the guy off she thought she was in love with, that they get raised to look at the whole idea of simping and pimping and living off of some woman like he's some kind of girl. This is an acceptable way to handle his affairs. It's not good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting. I was thinking about when you just said all of that. I'm going back to 50 and 60 years in my mind. I look at the 60s, although you might have differences of opinion, you actually had a black leadership class. You actually had a movement.
You did.
But what the best we have as far as civil rights or black leadership is Al Sharpton. That what Obama can produce an Al Sharpton and these Black Lives Matter, liberal back activists, whatever they are. Because he invited them to the White House, these Black Lives Matter people backed by George Soros with his $1 billion money.
I listened to Al Sharpton on something. He was talking about how much he liked fried chicken. Now, come on.
He is no Frederick Douglass. I know that much. He's not a Mary McLeod Bethune. He's not a Whitney Young. This is what we got. This is what we have.
Well, look at it. He broke in through James Brown, an entertainer.
Right.
James Brown introduced him on Soul Train, and said, this is my boy. Give him some play if you want me to play. So Don Cornelius said, all right. So that's how he got his break in. So he started off entertainment. That's what he does.
Right.
He's buffoonish, but well, respect as it may lie. But he's lost so much credibility over the years about jumping on the wrong thing just to get attention. The media loves him. So, that's his, little thing he does.
You remember seeing the movie called The Cooler with Alec Baldwin and William Macy? Are you familiar with that movie?
No.
It's a movie about this guy called The Cooler. They use him in Las Vegas casinos. When you're on a hot winning streak, they'll bring this guy around to cool your streak off. I look at Al Sharpton as the cooler. Anytime something getting hot, people try to get organized, get ready. He comes to Ferguson or Baltimore and cool everything off. So he is a mob guy. I mean, he is a mob informant. So he's an invention of the mob. As well as, they control entertainment, all this stuff. But I'm saying he's the cooler to me. I call him the cooler. Because anytime things about to get ready and hot and bothered, he comes around and cool everything off. I saw his effect in Ferguson firsthand.
Well, that's it. We don't have any black leadership because right now, we've got 40 years of it's almost there.
Right.
All we need is a little fine tuning and it'll be all right. But it's not all right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more than fine tuning needed. Trump getting elected was a good thing for the black population. They could get a chance to see what it really is rather than the gloss that they had become weakened by looking at too often.
Right.
It's like I've always said this. I find it much easier to deal with the good old boys in the South who will come right out and tell you that they don't like you or they do like you or really didn't want to like you, but they do because you such and such and such, than to deal with those clowns that will smile and grin in your face and stab you in the back and are just as racist as they can be behind closed doors.
Right. Mm-hmm.
See, and we bought into that seat too often. She's good for us. Why is she good for us? White guys can be good for us. White women can be bad for us. They can be good too. But you see, what are you looking at? Somebody smiling at your face? That's that kind of stuff you see on those sitcoms and those housewife shows. They're always making on a big show about being this and that, grinning at everybody and then trying to plot on how to destroy them.
It's interesting. You say that, I'm thinking in my mind. Black folks, we got this church mentality where our politics got to be feel good. Like everything got to be feel good. But the things that are needed for our survival and our success ain't gonna always be pretty. I keep on thinking about what Jimmy Hoffa and them was doing with the Teamsters and whatnot when they took on Kroger's and then they took on big business, all this stuff back in the 30s and the 40s and whatnot. Like you said, can you fight? Like you asked me, are you an activist? But can you fight in the streets? Are you a street fighter too? Can you fight for what you believe in?
You know what? The church metaphor has got a lot to do with our problem.
Mm-hmm.
I campaigned either for myself years ago or for somebody I was supporting. I need to get in the church parking lot after service to start passing out literature.
Mm-hmm.
How was service? Oh, great service. Great service. Yes, sir. I said, well, what did the pastor do? He had a great summer. Great summer. I said, well, what was his topic? I don't write the note, but it sure sounded good.
Sounded about right.
See, that's us. It sounded good.
Right. Same thing with Obama's speech last night. To a lot of black folks that heard the speech, it sound good. He cool. That sound good. He speak a good game.
There's another thing. Adolf Hitler relied on it.
Mm-hmm.
So have other dictators and totalitarian types. Most people don't really have enough understanding to really come up with any effective ideas or understand effectiveness in government.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of work along the lines of, if we get the right fearless leader and it'll be good. I think there's a whole propaganda thing that goes along where if somebody that you have come to accept as being okay says somebody else is okay, then you accept that somebody else is okay, whether he's a scoundrel or not.
Right.
He or she is a scoundrel. So we had our people too much being talked to about she's okay. But what about Bernie Sanders? That's the man.
Right.
Feel the burn. And see, the Democratic Party some decade ago, it set things up just so they could get Hillary in. So they came up with that super delegate stuff where you could get inside cronyism overriding the will of the people. So it was a manipulation. You kept the debates for the Democratic Party going when most of the male component of the country is out watching NFL or some game, or there's something else going on. So there was a low turnout for the debates. And then the hype that you saw on CNN, etc., about, oh, Hillary did so great, and the Bernie and Sanders was just like, oh, hell, he wasn't lacking. He whipped some butt, but they told you he was lacking. So people still wanted Sanders, but those super delegates that didn't have to go along with the will of the people, they did what they did, and you got that miserable, sorry candidate, Hillary Clinton. Meanwhile, Trump was an independent like Sanders, but the GOP did not have that. So he came in and he did his thing. He became the presidential candidate for the GOP. They didn't like him, but he won. And all this stuff about, well, Hillary got the popular vote. So what? The rules have been the same for 240 plus years. And if you're going to play the game, you need to deal with the rules. They haven't changed.
But what do you think about what they're doing, like with Keith Ellison, the black Muslim guy from Minnesota who wants to be the head of the DNC, and all this, like, I guess these Zionists or, I don't know, these Jewish people or faction in the Democratic Party trying to obstruct him and trying to make him, like, basically, it's like they're trying to question his manhood, like they're trying to undermine his integrity and whatnot. What's your thoughts about the process they're trying to do to read?
Careful what the hell you do, particularly when your people has had a habit of fronting off black people to get what you want. You know, the way it went most of the 20th century, first half anyway, they had no civil rights laws. So what black folk relied upon to get civil rights was the ASPCA laws.
Okay.
If it was wrong to do it to a dog, it was wrong to do it to a Negro. And the Jews were backing the Negroes because it was wrong to do it to a dog, wrong to do it to a Negro. It was wrong to do it to a Jew. So it was, a little give and take. Christianity, Judaism, Islam, they're all supposed to be monotheistic. Right. They all have their virtues and their drawbacks. So it is wrong for people who has been oppressed for a long time to start going around showing that same type of thing that oppressed them.
But you think Israel have a good reason to do that, though?
He has not do it, and I don't think so. The point is the Democratic Party is floundering, and they're trying to scapegoat for their own sorry performances. Every time the economy gets so bad and the public thinks that, okay, the Democrats can straighten this out so ordinary people don't suffer, and they put them in, they do something stupid. They pick some cause that nobody gives a damn about, that they want to make the big issue, and then most deplorably, they jump on this gun control thing. Now, for my whole life, I've always been a man needs to learn the manly art of self-defense. Being a former criminal court judge, elected twice to that position, been a prosecutor, the public defender for the city, almost 40 years ago, I ran it. Being a defense lawyer, I'll tell you this. The only thing the police can do when it comes to homicide is draw a chalk outline around your body. They can't keep you from being killed. It's up to you. And to a great extent, the way the country was founded and the liberties that everybody's supposed to have depend upon you being able to defend yourself.
Right.
So you're not getting all of these guns out of the streets. You're not getting them out of the sock drawers. You're not getting the ones that usually get confiscated that are 85, 90 years old, half rusted, won't hold but 4 rounds of ammunition and only have 2 in there. And the murder weapon of choice is not a gun anyway. It's usually a knife, butcher knife, or a hammer, or a screwdriver.
That's fascinating.
Or even a rock. So, get ready for it. We've got a problem in our neighborhoods, which is We are not adequately socializing and acculturating our children. We don't know how to raise kids. The people that are having kids don't have a daddy at home for them by choice. And it is a messed up thing. We've abdicated our responsibility, and institutions like this kangaroo court they've got in Memphis called Shelby County Juvenile Court has taken over, you know, the circus, the plantation, the farm, the ranch to deal with colored kids for fun and profit.
Wow.
And think about it. Only 19.1% of the city's registered voters, let alone the overall population, is white. Only 24.8% of the county's registered voters, let alone overall population, is white. Yet they run that place. And that screws up more black families, more black lives, more black children with insensitive racist bigotry than anything else. And that's typified by what goes on across the country. And we let them get away with it.
Yeah, I want to ask you this, guy. When you saying all this stuff, it just running across my mind. I want to know, in your opinion, do black people have any political friends or allies? Really, true political friends or allies in this current situation we found ourselves in?
Does what now?
Do black people do black people have any political friends or allies? Really, true political friends or allies in this period?
We don't. We are directionless. Too much of our attention is caught up with something like Atlanta Housewives. Too much of it's caught up with rap ideology. No aspersions to the rap artists. It's just what the industry does. Too much of it is concerned about who's singing, who's preaching, who sounds the best of this. Too much of it's concerned about, well, go someplace and look around at the sisters. They've got all of these things on that don't match in terms of color coordination. It's garish. It's too much money being spent. Children, you know, are supposed to be benefit of a check coming in, and they spend $180 on some Jordans instead of some buddies where they're not going to play basketball and aren't athletic enough to put it to some use. And then as soon as they get over that, then everything changes because the standard of living is gone. There's no check, so there's the hustle. The boys haven't been raised to be men. And we've got a bad situation. And then we've got everything on TV and in the motion pictures slanted against these boys' self-developing manhood ideation. You know, I'm in a place right now where they have the yin-yang symbol on everything. And the yang principle is just gone by the wayside. There's no balance.
Wow.
But anyway, there's all kinds of things going on. It's like the Democrats are really squawking about this nomination for
Attorney General.
Attorney General.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
Sessions. Oh, well, he's same age I am, been doing the same thing I've been doing for the same number of years, and no, they can do better. And there's a thing called appearance of impropriety and clean hands, and he gives the appearance of impropriety and does not present himself, has not presented himself, is something that is worthy of the confidence of the public in him bringing to the Justice Department a sense of justice, you see. But the Democratic Party has wasted their credibility over the years on taking nonsense positions on nonsensical, irrelevant issues. They squawk and they holler, and when they had the opportunity, they didn't do it. They didn't do what they should have done. And then again, it's this case: you get your foot in the door, you can't half step. The media's business is tearing down anybody that looks like they have a remote chance of being successful, and this they're pushing their select agenda, in which case they'll push you as long as it serves their needs. And when you are a minority, you can't be the first in a position and do a lackadaisical job. You got to go in there and kick butt.
So you look at, like, we have these two black attorney generals who might help Jeff Sessions. Could he do any worse or better than the previous attorney general?
Oh, those two didn't do anything. Look at the situation here and where we live. Okay, all of the wrongdoing, all those rape kits that aren't tested, all of that corruption going on in the DA's office here, that's supposed to be something the U.S. Attorney's Office looks at. But the current U.S. Attorney was nominated to be a federal judge by the senior Republican senator for the state. He ain't about to rock that boat. So why didn't the Obama administration come down and do something? They did to an extent the year after he got in office in 2008, and they got that money put up with the county commission to simply say we want other voting machines besides these deballed machines. And all they got to do is have a simple resolution to get them replaced. But they are being used to corrupt the elections, and it has been the case for the last 18 years. So we can't even get 3 Democrats who need to go along with with the rest of them and get the majority. We can't even get them to do that. It's a shame, but they don't come in and follow it up. They found Shelby County's juvenile court is the most racist, bigoted, biased, prejudiced, and inept organization of such like they've ever encountered. And they've been ragging them out there under 5 years worth of edict. In this town, the administration in a black town and in a black county allows them to la-di-da continue along with no support from the local level to do something about what that Justice Department, weak as it was one of the most embarrassing things they'd ever seen.
Wow.
I mean, they need to tear that building down and build it back up brick by brick with a whole new structure. And they need to look into some stuff concerning this money that for the last 35 years they've been putting away and have a slush fund build up using tax dollars to support politicking. See, there are a lot of things wrong. No. See, everybody's trying to be nice.
But what would be one thing I was joking with people recently. I said Obama freed black people like Lincoln, like his hero, but this time from the Democratic plantation. What would be the truest step that we need to take as black people right now in this moment? Should we join the Republican Party? Should we do something else in terms of political empowerment? What should we do right now? What would you suggest that
I
black
would
people
suggest that we don't join either.
Okay.
We can't join the Republican Party because they've got such crank backward BS that they push on the public that we can't go there. The Democratic Party on the local level wants our support for the national level, but then goes Republican on the local level. They double cross us. Too many of our own people who are ensconced in the Democratic Party, they treat it like it's a social club instead of a thing to deal with business that impacts people's ability to be safe in their communities, to have viable jobs and opportunities to acquire education without going bankrupt in the process. You see, there are all kinds of things. So we need to withhold our support depending upon who's going to deliver, or at least the promises. Let's see what happens when somebody's in office for 4 years, 2 years. What did they deliver to us? And if they don't deliver, then turn him out or her out.
So will you suggest
like Steve Cohen, Steve Cohen delivered to our community?
That's a good question. That's a great question, actually.
We can't control the senatorial thing for the U.S. Senate because we just don't have the numbers versus the whole state of Tennessee. But for the 9th district, we certainly do. Who do we support and why do we support them and what are we getting out of it? There's Turley, Belt, Smith, et al., the in crowd, who were basically neutral on whatever party they support other than, they'll vote Republican and get the Democratic congressman to support their particular thing, but we haven't gotten anything for the black middle class or the white one, for that matter, for the last 40 years for the 9th district, or it used to be 8th.
So would it be best? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Judge. Go ahead.
God, and everything else to add to that. It speaks for itself.
Well, I'm hearing you saying, I'm saying, would it be best for us to really, instead of running candidates, to form a informed voting block that hold these candidates accountable, to make them sign things to confirm that they will do what we need them to do in our district? Would it be best to have just an informed voting block that hold these people accountable?
Yes, we have people we need to look at. We need to look at Harold Collins. We need to look at Sidney Chisholm. We've got a lot of people that need to get looked at. You know, what have you done? What are you doing? What double cross did you put on us? Who did you rip off and who did you go favor to get your own little sorry game together? You know, this isn't just about you. This is when you're in public service, it isn't just a job. It's like you have a duty and an obligation to lead for the benefit of your constituents, not just you.
But it seems like in Memphis, they just take care of their constituents, are their buddies and friends and family with a lot of these people.
They don't take care of their constituents. They take care of the people who finance them. Who give them side deals, things under the table, or even now, there are a number of ways of getting it across the table that aren't technically illegal, but are just as wrong.
Well, it's interesting you point out that the majority does not really run anything in Memphis. It's minority control, but it's a white daddy plantation town. I mean, Memphis should be a big city. I mean, we got more people here than New Orleans and St. Louis and Atlanta and Nashville.
Yeah,
but we play it small.
The largest city in the country.
Right, but we play it
small.
Yeah,
and it's a plantation. But you see, just like a plantation, you have to get the whole plantation scenario. It's like you got a very few white folks running a whole big passel of Negroes. And then you got a lot of white folks that are suffering as a result of that. So see, this isn't a thing where the white folks rule. Yeah, they may, but it doesn't rule for the benefit of the ordinary white man in this town.
Right.
The ordinary white guys getting ripped off too. And that's happening all over the country.
That's true.
That's why they're lashing out at confusion. They don't know what's going on either. They're too caught up in NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, you name the 3L letters, for the sport.
UFC,
and they're all into that.
That's right.
And they're all in it. But they don't know what's really going on because they get all the motive. They don't pay careful attention. They boogeyman their own unions, which used to be the way that political truth got out into the ordinary world. And people got an opportunity to act in a collective fashion. See, all these good things. So it's white, black, brown, red, yellow. We're getting screwed. It's a thing where 95% of the profit in America goes to just 3% of the population. So in other words, the 5% is split by 97% of the people.
Wow.
We put up with it. We put up with it.
Well, we want our Walmarts. We don't want a living wage. We rather have a Walmart. Is that the problem?
It isn't even Walmart. It's just what you allow to go on behind it. Like, if you seen what they got on out there right now, I had no problem getting back on the air, but they've got Fat and Fabulous, My 600-Pound Life,
right.
Honey Boo Boo.
Right.
You know, they'll put them on the air. Why? You see, somebody talks sense to you, starts getting you to think, starts giving you right and wrong. They don't want you to hear it. For 15 years, I had a fight with Hollywood about right and wrong. They didn't want me to say right. They wanted their little don't care right or wrong. They just wanted it. Did it make good entertainment? You see, too much of everything is now configured as entertainment rather than as perhaps a function that can be entertaining. You know, a guy can give a profound speech about the economy and be entertaining in the way he presents it, but the the prime thing that he's trying to do is not provide entertainment. Go see a stand-up comedian if you do that, but stand-up comedian is better if he gives you a little update on humanity. Like when Richard Pryor used to do his thing, or Chappelle, you know, you knew the people that they were talking about because you'd met those people.
Right.
By the way, why don't they have Chappelle back on? That was entertaining.
Yeah, even for that brief moment on Saturday Night Live, it was brilliant. You know, it gave you a reminder, hey, there's some things going on that we need to be more concerned about. But like, it's such a, you know, it's like such a puritanical society. Even though we got all this sex stuff, I mean, people still are fascinated with scandals that have something with dealing with sex. Like we saw that with the Anthony Weiner thing, with the Pizzagate, and now with this Donald Trump thing. I mean, what's your thoughts about the Donald Trump thing with Russia?
Oh, I bet. Look, it would be good, frankly, if we had somebody that was willing to deal with somebody that's an antagonist on a reasonable, forthright basis. Why pick a fight?
Right.
If somebody can support you, okay. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And good relations is good in diplomacy.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly are you fighting about? Circumstances with Russia are quite similar to those with the U.S. You know, both sides can blow each other to hell if it came to that.
Right.
Fortunately, nobody's talking that nonsense anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the point with you got to be evil to Russia, or you can't be on good relations with the head of state of another political entity that you got to deal with?
Mm.
You know, if you can sit down without throwing daggers at each other or plotting on how you're going to be like pro wrestlers talking smack when actually you're good friends, you know, hey, get over it. That's like a beat down before the pro wrestling match, WrestleMania. We're going to talk smack about each other. And what you see will be something that's faked and rehearsed.
Mm-hmm.
Too much of what we deal with is WrestleMania.
Yeah, I definitely.
I mean, it's
that.
entertainment.
Yeah.
It ain't a sporting event. Like the state of New York no longer classifies wrestling as a sport. It's classified as an entertainment.
Interesting. Wow.
See,
I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's all semantics and things. But what do you think about? It's kind of weird. I'm trying to understand. Like, I'm trying to look at, they telling me about Donald Trump not trusting the CIA and FBI, but they have a history, a track record of lying to people, of misleading people, especially with the 2003 war in Iraq with the CIA.
Let me say this. Here's what's wrong with the CIA and OSS before that.
Right.
The early people that set up both were little rich Ivy League college students who had very rich families who traveled around the world, and they could speak French, German, etc., Italian. But they were still little rich boys who'd get their butt kicked if they were out on the streets in any kind of city, American or foreign.
Mm-hmm.
And they set it up. So you got a little inside fraternity of rich kids that set this stuff up, and they found that they could not acquire information. They couldn't infiltrate anything. So what they did is, it seems they made the decision to switch from gathering information to being the causal agent behind anything that happened. So they took to try and kill people off, put the right people that they thought were the right people in, and you got a bunch of little rich nerds running everything who don't understand life. They hire some people who are deep off into the killing experience as contractors to do what they do, and that has a lack too.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole intelligence community is run by some people that are at the fringe ends of reality with different perspectives. So it becomes self-defeating. The Cubans infiltrated our system. We couldn't infiltrate theirs. The Russians infiltrated our system. We couldn't infiltrate theirs. Chinese infiltrated our system, but we couldn't infiltrate theirs. And what we tried to do is throw a lot of money at everybody and hope we could buy something. But, just give the American what he wants, and you lie and we get false information and stupid. Even staunch GOP late Ike Eisenhower president, he wrote last comment, you guys left me a legacy of ashes because you lied to me. And I'm the president. You're supposed to exist for me. That's that thing with the U-2 being shot down over Russia and Gary Powers getting jacked up in exchange for that Russian spy.
Right.
And then what do we call Ike Eisenhower? Smiling Ike. That's the way they used to portray him, always smiling. We want Smiling Ike. Well, it may be. That's his public persona, but in private, he has a reputation in the U.S. Army as having had the foulest mouth in the history of the U.S. Army.
Mm.
He was famous for making lieutenants and captains literally pee on themselves.
Wow.
So, be public persona versus private reality.
He did warn Kennedy about the military industry complex. He did warn him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And guess what? Both Kennedy and LBJ consulted with Eisenhower all the way up until Nixon got in.
Wow. I mean, actually, this as well too. I mean, it's like it's so much stuff going on, but you as being a person with your extensive legal experience and on both sides of the of the situation, I want to get your thoughts about how would you handle what happened in Chicago with the Black Chicago youth who I guess they kidnapped and tortured this white disabled man, and they got a lot of people were upset on social media. People were saying they should throw the book at them and they should be put to death and stuff like that. And I'm just trying to contrast and compare it to how Dylan Roof was treated, the guy who was recently sentenced to death for the Emmanuel 9 church shootings.
My comment: what the hell does social media have to do with justice? That's a lynch mob perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Justice should be slow or fast, as justice and equity and truth demand.
Mm-hmm.
And see what happens.
That's a good statement. That's a great statement. But you think that the youth should be thrown away? I mean, should they just forfeit their lives?
I don't know that they did it.
Okay.
The system doesn't know that they did it until they're proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm.
See, we're always in a hurry to know. So the media is invited to and capitalizes upon the opportunity to speculate.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, you speculate too much and the speculation becomes truth instead of what actually is the truth.
Yeah, I see that. You can see that happen all the time. You're right. Like, I know you're talking about how they select stories or create stories to, what I'm saying, it's the, I guess, rev up ratings and stuff like that. It's not really about the truth. It's about, ratings and money.
Well, see, here's the bottom line on that. Adolf Hitler and his propaganda minister, Goebbels, said it. Joseph Goebbels.
Mm-hmm.
You tell a lie long enough and loud enough, and you can get anybody to believe it. And when you speculate long enough and loud enough, anybody believes it. So fake news becomes indistinguishable from what passes for ordinary news.
Well, actually, like you talk about that. I was thinking about what you just said. I was thinking about this all of a sudden this interest in the OJ Simpson case. How they basically it's like they're rewriting the history on the OJ Simpson case with these documentaries and these mini series on TVs. What your thought about the OJ Simpson case and how it's being presented now?
I knew quite a few of the people that were involved in that. Some that were called as witnesses. I got to look at all of the evidence that they had get introduced in trial, and let's put it this way. They were so anxious to get somebody that it was ridiculously poorly done.
Mm-hmm.
There was probable cause to indict somebody, but it wasn't OJ, it was Furman, the detective.
Mm-hmm.
What they say happened to Nicole and Goldman, it wasn't AJ, it wasn't OJ. That man's innocent.
Mm-hmm.
They just wanted him done. And see, thing the media has not followed up on is four of the primary detectives in the OJ case got indicted for falsifying information, documents, planning evidence in what they call the Rampart scandal. That's Rampart's precinct in L.A. And they had to let, I think it was 128 people out of prison who were innocent, but were in there because that group framed them. And see, that was the group responsible for that OJ investigation. So the media didn't cover up on that, cover that.
Well, also, I saw a documentary a couple of years ago. There's a white guy on death row who said he actually killed Nicole and Ron Goldman. He's a serial killer from, I believe, Kentucky. And he's on death row in Florida right now. But he claimed that he killed Nicole and Ron Goldman that night.
Look, look, from the pictures I saw, Nicole and Goldman got their throats slit from ear to ear. Somebody reached in with a pair of pliers and pulled their tongues out through the slit throats. That's called the Colombian necktie. That is not OJ. There were two people. Somebody had a 9.5, size 9.5 pair of shoes, and somebody had a size 10. That was in the blood. OJ wears a size 12. That if it does not fit, you should have quit.
Right.
Well, OJ takes an XXL glove of the type that was involved. Furman takes a size large, which was what the glove was. I know the man who made the glove. His name is Richard Zuckerwar. Zuckerwar.
Wow. So this is why. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Judge.
They called a good friend of mine who is one of those top tier consultants for the heavyweight types that, low drag, high speed operatives in the international intelligence community. They called him in as an expert on knife killing. He looked at their so-called animation that they wanted to show the jury, and he said flatly, there's no way in hell that could have happened that way.
Wow.
And whoever did it was a professional. See, when you stab somebody, it's not like you see in the movies where somebody throws the knife, sticks the guy in the chest, and he goes, and collapses.
Right.
You see, the method of death, unless you strike the central nervous system or the brain, or you punch through the kidneys, which cause momentary paralysis, is that the person has to bleed to death. So you stab a guy with a knife, he doesn't even feel like he's been hit. So the guy that does the stabbing, unless he's a pro, goes, what the hell? You is this Superman? Nothing happened. Stabs him again. Nothing happened. Stabs him again. Nothing happened. Again and again and again and again. And by the time he's tried to stab the guy 15 to 40 sometimes, that accelerates the loss of blood and blood pressure, and then the guy collapses. But see, a pro comes in, he says, this is a fatal thing. He may not die won't die instantly, but I killed him. So he stabs him. Nicole and Goldman got the same 2 stab wounds, which are fatal. And then they got their throats cut and the tongues pulled out. That ain't OJ.
Right. But it was the Nicole. I'm gonna ask you about the restaurant. I heard the restaurant that Ron Goldman worked at and Nicole dined at had organized crime connections, and that Nicole's sister was dating a mob guy.
Well, did you watch the trial?
I remember, man, it was like 20-some years ago. Yeah, I watched some of the trial.
Well, I tape recorded every single scrap of it in my chambers. I was a bachelor. And I watched it every evening before I went home.
Wow.
There was extensive testimony from a remote location where they shouted in the faces that where Judge Ito and the prosecution and the defense heard these 2 guys were in the federal witness protection program, and it was their understanding that Nicole and Goldman, Nicole specifically, Goldman just as a side chance, got done in to send them a message to keep quiet. Nicole's 2 sisters were romantically involved with these 2 individuals who were in the federal witness protection program. They testified to that, but Ito did not allow the jury to hear it.
Wow. So that was they left out in the OJ thing they did on Fox. Oh, God. So that's true. Wow.
And that stuff about the DNA stuff, the testimony on that from the expert that the state didn't even know they had. The defense called him as their own witness, but it was interesting. He was a state's witness. He was the instructor for 2 of the state's key witnesses on DNA. He said they were very poor students, but in his estimation, that was not OJ's seriological signature. It was somebody who had a similar background, but there were no less than 95,000 people in L.A. County that could have donated that signature DNA. He said it was somebody from an northeast Mediterranean background, or perhaps from the island of Sicily.
Oh, wow.
With some African-American ancestry. That was, it's like, okay.
So they let you know it was an organized crime. So they didn't really highlight that. You didn't allow that in the regular trial. You didn't let the jurors hear that, huh?
Yeah. Now, see what Johnny Cochran did. And by the way, I met him back in 1966 out at UCLA. Great man.
Wow.
What he did was he selected a jury where a large percentage of the people on the jury were over 45 and had grown up in Los Angeles and were black. And they knew that LAPD had about as much trustworthiness as a snake getting ready to bite you.
Right.
No aspersions on current crop of police. I don't know none of them, but, you know, at that time, LAPD had the reputation of lying as soon as they would breathe.
And that's where the SWAT team come out of, the LAPD, right? Colonel Parker, the SWAT team.
Yeah, they did. And see, LAPD was known in the 50s for its corruption. So they passed an ordinance changed in L.A. where the chief would be in for life for good behavior. So they recruited somebody far away from the organized crime and corruption, and they got Chief Parker from Alabama.
Okay.
Now, in 1973, I happened to be in Jackson, Mississippi, and I pulled down an LAPD recruitment poster that I got off of a phone pole in Jackson, Mississippi, and sent it to some friends who had a back home in L.A. So they've got Los Angeles with a lot of Jews, Asians, Hispanics, and black folk, and you're recruiting the police from Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi. So you had a novel situation in L.A. where the police ran City Hall.
Wow.
And you got all of these people from Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and all of these places.
It's like a Dixie Mafia with a West Coast.
Well, just the ordinary, but you see, you had just the ordinary people, whites who weren't doing so well. But California had this welfare system back then that was really strange. And they came out to L.A. to get jobs and settle in. So they got, you know, bewildered. Who are all of these Jews, black folk, brown folk, red and yellow folk that are all in L.A.? So they moved out into the San Fernando Valley, which is on the other side of those mountains, eventually to Orange County. But they trusted their southern brethren who were on LAPD to keep things safe. So LAPD ran LA, politically and otherwise.
That's, man,
so
much history.
Like Tom Bradley. Tom Bradley ran track at UCLA. He was in the Korean War, and he became a lawyer. They wouldn't let him be a squad car, a rookie squad car cop until he became a member of the bar.
Wow. And this is the future mayor of L.A., right? Ran for governor?
Yeah, future mayor of L.A.
Wow.
So he wound up retiring as a captain, and by a fluke got elected as chairman of the Retired Policemen's Association. So the clown he was running against the third time he ran for mayor was a character named Sam Yorty, excuse me. And Yorty had only been in L.A. like 112, 120 days out of the last year, traveling all around wasting money. And Yorty was campaigning on the issue of what you needed was a strong law enforcement type. So hell, Bradley was the cop. So he got elected. Now, when I grew up, he patrolled my neighborhood. He was known as fair, but he had a reputation for having never lost a race down a back alley to whip somebody's head. So, I mean, he would stop the squad car, get out and beat you with that nightstick, and then ask you what you thought you were doing. Well, sorry, you made a mistake. Get your tacky butt home. But he would also talk to the grown folk in the neighborhood with his partner about, you know, understand there's some problems. Now, if you guys want to take care of it, we can say we were having a meeting and you weren't there.
So this would be the great example of what community policing would look like. You know, that's community policing. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, California was officially desegregated from day one, but they had stuff up no colored, you know, white only.
Right.
And the neighborhoods were segregated just because of economics. So L.A. was L.A. But, you know, it was a different kind of thing.
Yeah, I want to ask you this as well, because I know this, January marks anniversary of the killing of Prentice Bunchy Carter and John Huggins on UCLA campus. And a friend of mine shared with me a letter that Kathleen Cleaver recently sent out to her and some other people about, like, I guess it was something against Elaine Brown. Like, I know that Elaine Brown in her autobiography, A Taste of Power, talks about her relationship with J. Richard Kennedy, the intelligence officer and former manager for Harry Belafonte. Now, but people now are trying to hold it against her now. I'm trying to understand, why is it a big deal now?
I knew everybody.
Mm-hmm.
See, I recruited John Huggins and Bunchy Carter to UCLA. I was on the student recruitment panel.
Right.
When I got to UCLA in 1965, when my class got in, there were 145 black students at UCLA, which had 60,000+ students full-time on campus.
Mm-hmm.
There were 72 full-time undergrads, 73 full-time black graduate students. Between 1965 and 1967, we raised hell. And we wound up getting them to concede that they want to let in 250 more blacks in addition to what came in regularly for special admissions for 1967. For 1968, we got them to agree to 250 more. So that's 500 in a year and a half, when we started off with 145 sometime before. Now, see, California always had this thing for the University of California, that it was not just on academics, but it was supposed to develop leadership. It said leadership for all communities, the colored who have suffered under slavery, the Asian who otherwise would be dominated by tongs, the Hispanics who would be dominated by Spanish gangs. They need to develop their leadership. Mm-hmm. So it was based on a competitive assessment of grade point average, aptitude tests, and or other factors that indicate an ability to succeed and leadership potential. So we got all these folk in. What was going on is there was a guy named Ron Everett, a.k.a. Ron Karinga, a.k.a. Maulana Ron Karinga, who started the US organization, who founded Kwanzaa, who became snitches for the FBI and the SIS unit, the LAPD. Mm-hmm. So they were going around killing all the black leadership. So what happens is we had gotten in 3 people of interest. Geronimo Pratt, who wound up doing a lot of time in the state penitentiary for murder until Johnny Cochran got him off when he found out LAPD had falsified testimony and evidence. They had John Huggins and Bunchy Carter. John Huggins and Bunchy Carter got shot down by 4 people in the cafeteria of what's now the Minority Studies Center, or the secondary, when they moved it to a place called Bunch Hall, named after a brother who was the first brother on the UN Executive Committee.
Yeah, Ralph Bunch, yeah.
And it was known as Campbell Hall. There were 43 witnesses to the murder that took place a little after noon in the cafeteria. John Huggins and Bunchy Carter were shot. Everybody knew who shot them. They knew them by name. The people were telling the LAPD where their mothers lived. Well, they caught 2 of them who were accessories, but not the gunman. They went to trial, got convicted of second-degree murder. They were sent to the penitentiary. Within the year, they were in a work camp, walked off. They took the APBs, as all points bulletins, down within 48 hours. And almost 30 years later, they tried to turn themselves in and were told, hey, we don't care. Bye-bye.
Wow.
That did the shooting. Everybody knew them. They never arrested them. 2 cops talked to me. Detectives were saying, oh, that's nonsense. We're not in on it. I said, yes, you are. So they called me up. They asked me to go to a Denny's. And I met them, and they said, I said, why you want me to meet you here? Well, you were right. How'd you know this? I said, well, that's just through the grapevine where it's going. You guys are in on it. I said, why? They said, well, we can't bust these us people because every time we go to do it, somebody in our organizations is tipping them off. So they found all these dead bodies of black militants and activists that had been buried on a farm that they had connections with, that Karinga's people were responsible for killing. So he tortured really tortured 3 or 4 sisters. He was paranoid, and he got sent to the California State Penitentiary. Well, within 14 months of him showing up in the penitentiary, he had been released and was given tenure in the California State University system. And see, he was trying to get a program known as Usology through the Black Studies Department that we'd put in place at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been a great recruitment tool for him. But, you know, I won't celebrate Kwanzaa for that reason to this day.
Wow.
So it was a snitch who was behind it. Now, if anybody is old enough and remembers what happened on the first Million Man March more than 20 years ago, Minister Farrakhan invited Ron Karenga up on stage and said, you know, many brothers have a problem with you, but in the spirit of reconciliation, we'll let you talk. We need to stop killing each other. But you see, that fell by the wayside. And if you noticed on the 20th anniversary of the Million Man March, did you see any brothers? No, you saw a whole bunch of sisters. So the sisters are commemorating the Million Man March by co-opting the anniversary thereof. You know, it's an interesting commentary on the status of the Black community. It's a matriarchy now. It's not a man thing. The yang part of the yin-yang principle is gone.
Yeah, you said, well, I mean, cut out, Joe, but I want to get back to, you said that there was a property where they found a whole bunch of Black activist bodies buried.
Yeah, Black militants and everything else.
Connected to us? It was owned by us?
To us, yeah, it was.
I can find this online. I can research this. Like, this is back in the 70s, right?
In the 60s.
In the 60s, wow. And Ron Karenga was able to become a tenured professor?
Yeah, see,
only in America,
Ron
like John King.
He started off as Ron Everett.
Okay.
He had long, wavy hair and blue-green eyes, and he was student body president out at L.A. City College. And he spoke with a Jamaican accent. Now, the next time I saw him, he was supposed to be the militant leader, had his head shaved, wore dark shades so you couldn't see his eyes, and had a Fu Manchu mustache. And he was better, you have to understand is that the Black man need to know, howsoever, it is not at all necessary for you to struggle and work your head, because my line will teach you. So they'd go around disrupting meetings in the Black community in about 67 or 68. You know, when there was some independent, you know, joy in the Black community, and Black folks started doing everything. He and some others had so infiltrated Black organizations and community units that everybody was afraid to talk to anybody, because you'd get called in by the FBI or the SIS unit, the LAPD, you know, about what you said. So it was very disruptive. And when Nixon got in, after Hillary Clinton was campaigning all over the country as a youth representative to get him in, it all fell apart. It was kind of like Black folk, like my Native American side, were all too inured of Great White Daddy in the White House who would take care of them. So when Tricky Dick got in there, they didn't think he was going to take care of them like LBJ had been doing. Right. So stuff started falling apart. Gangs had disappeared in L.A., and then they started coming back. You see some problems with what was going on, like Tookie Williams, who started one of the big gangs, is still a force in the country right now. Well, he was a kid on a playground I helped run with a good partner of mine, still a good partner of mine. We still work together. His name is Cliff Stewart. And he was my boss. And we tried to help the young brother, but as Cliff said, we couldn't drain the swamp, so Tookie just decided to be the baddest ass alligator in the swamp. Right. And he started the gang. But he was a good kid, smart. He wound up writing all these kids' books. So he was the last person executed on California's death row a little while ago. Right. Wow. But you see, that's a problem right now. You can't drain that swamp. You've got no help from the government. The government ought to be interested in it because it impacts everybody that lives within 150 miles of the place. Right.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, this is gonna blow a lot of people's minds. Just listen to what you are living history. So I want to ask you this too.
LBJ actually put in place a lot of stuff. Not Kennedy. LBJ put in a lot of stuff in place that was good for our community. He enabled the structure to be set up. And then we had these people with that scoundrel J. Edgar Hoover backing them, like Ron Karenga with the US organization and other stuff like that, who was going around trying to undercut what black folk were doing to get together. And it created just havoc. Nobody could trust anybody. And between Tricky Dick and then shortly J. Edgar, they just made it a mess. And then, you know, from Power to the People, I'm Black and I'm Proud, Power Fist, Dashikis and Afros. You got that miserable ass movie, Superfly, 1971, where, you know, it glorified cocaine, and this fool had Rod O'Neal with his half bald self, was wearing a toupee and letting the rest of his hair go down to his shoulders, driving a pimp mobile, selling coke. And you start getting lines of black folk 2 blocks long to go see that miserable ass movie. And within a short time, they had to bring it back. And that was in 72. I can remember being in D.C. working at a think tank, and I saw a line 3 blocks long to see that movie. And then everybody, man, I got to sell me some of that coke, man. Then J. Edgar and the boys started pushing it in the black community, and they started pushing crack. Not long after that, then all hell went loose, and then they had some bad sides with local juvenile courts like ours that corrupted the process, where it became a matter of survival to have babies outside on purpose to get a check. The more you had, the bigger your check. And if you had somebody trying to be a righteous daddy and help raise the children, well, they'd get the check cut off because some snoop for the welfare department would take a picture of it or snoop by and witness it, and they'd cut the check off because a man came over there and spent 3 hours playing with the kids or a kid. So, you know, it became a poisonous negative feedback system. And we still have that.
Yeah,
the last person to talk about it was LBJ. Carter tried, but it was too late.
Right. I want to actually go back a little bit to that. I don't know with Ron Karenga, but I know I brought up Elaine Brown because a lot of folks feel like she helped instigate the incident at UCLA, which led to the death of Carter.
She didn't.
Okay.
She didn't. See how Elaine Brown got involved in the whole thing. She was a secretary at UCLA.
Okay.
Working for the staff. And we were recruiting people from all over the city. We were holding recruitment sessions in the projects. And Elaine was a very intelligent person, so we just recruited her. Why not? She was there. We saw her all the time. So we recruited her. She meant well. And, you know, it was her perspective. But no, she didn't have anything to do with it. All of that stuff started because Ron Karenga and the US organization was trying to get control of the Black Studies program that other black students had gotten a promise from the university to start implementing as a program of study. Now, one of the bad problems, again, is we got all of these black folk in, and whereas the first group we got in at 250 said, you know, brother, right on, we right there. You know, we got to carry on the cause. The second group was going, I'm sorry, brother, I appreciate the sacrifices you have made to get me in, but I can't afford to jeopardize my career. You'll have to go on without me. I'll be there in spirit. Grab that fool and drag him with us. We did. Yes, but you see, one person who's now dead was one half-stepping Negro, and he called a meeting of new admittees and violated the rules and got himself elected BSU president. So he was a coward. And the US organization started intimidating him, so we did not know that he was taking the Black Studies program the way he was so Karenga could get a hold of it. Well, the mainstream BSUs, some BSUs from off campus, the Panther Party, and some community people who did not like it stood up to Karenga, and that's how that whole mess started. It wasn't Elaine Brown.
So what do you think about some of the Panthers being suspicious of her because of her relationship with J. Richard Kennedy, the intelligence officer? He used to
Oh,
be
that had nothing to do.
Harry
That had nothing to
Belafonte's
do with
manager.
anybody. See, that had nothing to do with anybody. That's part of what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many people that were infiltrated
Right.
into our organizations that nobody trusted anybody.
Right.
You see. And the Panther Party up in San Francisco was more a social clique. The ones down in L.A. had a different operation. And then the ones in Chicago had a totally different thing. And then all of them were influenced by the Deacons for Defense and Justice, who adopted the Black Panther emblem in Louds County, down south. So it was just mass confusion. It was typical of what was going on in the community. Some are guilty. She wasn't. She just got caught up in the whole thing about who could you trust. So some of those people that were most trusted turned out to be active informants. I was surprised by a guy named Louis Tackwood, who used to be one of the Down brothers. Well, he wrote a book called The Glass House, and then inside the Glass House, another one. It was featured in Playboy magazine. He scared the devil out of everybody, especially when I just in law school attended a murder trial, and I heard him testify, and he was identified not as an informant, but as a lieutenant on LAPD and #1 undercover officer, not just informant. You know, like, oh, wow, man, this dude, oh, man, he knows everything. And then when he wrote the book, he scared everybody because he filled in the dotted. You know, he filled in the missing blank. You know, he filled that in and dotted the T's and the I's and crossed the T's. It was horrible. He also said, for example, in his book, that he was ordered by A.L.L. Younger, then the District Attorney General for L.A. and later for the state of California under the Reagan administration, to frame Angela Davis. So he talks about how he broke in, burglarized her home with the help of the LAPD burglary squad and stole some of her, I think, 5 or 6 weapons and planted them with these young, crazy brothers who were going to break the Soledad brothers out of jail.
That's Jonathan Jackson, George Jackson brother, those people?
Yeah. And that brother that brought him in, that young 15-year-old, he was a little psycho. I'd met him. He's crazy. You know, but see, that's how they did it. And I'll tell you something else. Ronald DeFries, known as with the Che Lumumba thing. Right. CK. I knew him in junior high school. He was a little punk, and everybody used to take his lunch money. So somebody I went to law school with called me while I was just got to Tennessee, said, "Hey, Joe, guess who I just saw, man, up there coming out of A.L.L. Younger's office. He just gotten out of law school and working with the California Attorney General's office." I said, "Oh, hey, Ronald DeFries." I said, "You mean that punk from John Beer Junior High?" I said, "Yeah, you know the one we knew." I said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." A couple of weeks later, he said, "Man, he's back again." I went up and spoke to the brother. I said, "Yeah, man, you remember John Beer?" He said, oh, yeah, it was him. And then not 3 weeks later, he comes up in Sinke with Che Lumumba thing. Not Che Lumumba, that was the organization.
Liberation Army.
Symbionese Liberation Army kidnapping Patty Hearst. I said, "Oh, give me a break."
So you think that was really him that did that, or what do you think his role was in that then?
Well, in other words, what happened is your boy who wrote The Glass House, he put in there, he put in there how he helped burglarize those weapons from Angela's house and set that whole thing up. And the way it came up was Reagan was running around hollering about there were communists that infiltrated the University of California. So the LA Times challenged Reagan to find one. So they came up with poor Angela Davis, who, when she was 18 years old, had been a member of the Che Lumumba Club, which had some affiliation. She wasn't anymore, but they set her up as the communist, and the LA Times laughed at Reagan and company and said, "You got to be kidding." This scholar, you can't be serious. So that's when the setup was supposed to go down. They wanted to make her look like a credible threat. See, there's some awful stuff that's going on. So when your government tells you something, I'd say if you had my experience, you'd believe they were lying through their teeth most of the time, or they had adopted a lie without knowing it was what it was.
Wow.
Now, there's some good and honest people that work for the government. You know, I have to confess I have from time to time myself, one way or the other. But it's like you got to be careful with the people at the top because they've got that operative principle that too many of them work by, you know, the ends justify the means.
Right.
And by any means necessary.
So everything get kind of blurred at that type of level of power. There's no morality in play. They don't think about morality.
So I wouldn't blame Elaine Brown. If I had to put any blame on anybody, it'd be Ron Karenga, the guy that started Kwanzaa.
But you know, it's funny. Like I think about that now. You think about fast forward to contemporary time. I look at black folks in the black community. They talk about so and so is an agent or so and so is a coon. Everybody's trying to worry about who's the agent. And it's so kind of like, you know, black conscious community. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they have all these beats and people call people agents.
That's how they work. You can get everybody thinking the wrong person is the agent. And the agent, nobody wants to believe is the agent until he comes out and surprises everybody.
So what do black folks need to understand? Because I always say if you become a student of history, you become a master of your destiny. How can we learn from? Yeah, what we need to understand from our experiences. Like,
what do we need to understand?
Yes, sir.
We have to understand as a people that we serve a vital function for this country. There is a now deceased psychologist known as Conrad Lorenz. He was a German Jew and had to flee the Nazis in the 30s. He wrote a series of papers in a book called On Aggression. And his theory was that anytime you had a large number of people, you had a massive amount of interpersonal hostility and aggression that needed to be displaced. And America was lucky because it had an identifiable portion of its population, the black race, who could be identified on sight. And because of the characteristics we have, we would be ready scapegoats. Even if we weren't actual physical ones, we would be good vicarious scapegoats. So when times got hard in America, the general population could blame us for their troubles. And with that, they would displace their personal and interpersonal hostility and aggression and be more capable of unified action, particularly in times of crisis. So when things got good, we wouldn't be popular scapegoats. And when things like the economy gets bad, then we became scapegoats. So you'll see that process with the Obama administration. As the economy started tanking, people started getting nervous. He became a good figure. He was supposed to be in charge to blame for everybody's ills. And by association, we vicariously become the primary scapegoat again. Let's blame the colored. That's why we got all the problems. And see, Reagan, not Trump, but Reagan, St. Ron, rather, and George Herbert Walker Bush et al., they started talking about welfare cheats and everything else like that was the problem. And with that, you know, here we go, la-di-da, and now, you know, everybody was losing their job. Wall Street's back on their stroke, but the rest of us aren't. So there is that pressure all across America to find somebody to blame. So blame the colored boy in office and everybody that looks like it. And he didn't do a very good job when he had the chance. He just sort of struck me as a lazy somebody, lackadaisically just decided to take it as a showpiece. There was no essential legislation coming out of his administration. There was no effective leadership. Most of the people that he had involved were ignorant of the overall process and inexperienced and had not one wisdom, but were too young and inexperienced and naive at what they were doing. And he personally wasn't experienced with inner city, big city, mainland America. So you got a bad deal across, and now we've been set back decades because everybody says, see, the colored had their chance. They blew it. They could have at least done something for themselves. He didn't even do that.
Wow.
That's like if Jackie Robinson had gotten in to play major leagues and struck out every damn time he got to bat, you know, and dropped a whole bunch of balls. There never would have been any more brothers in the major league because you had a chance. They can't play ball.
Right.
If the 332nd Red Tails hadn't been such badasses in a fighter plane, they never would have had an integrated series of armed services under Executive Order 1981 signed by Harry Truman in 1947. You know, so that's a classic example. They were saying the colored folk don't need to integrate with white people in the armed services. So Truman kind of knew about it. He said, what about these colored boys flying planes? Oh, they ain't no good. He said, didn't you have a red flag competition in Nevada last year? So, yeah, we did. So what was the purpose? To find the baddest fighter group in the U.S. Army Air Force. So, well, who won it? Oh, yeah, he said those Negro boys in the 332nd won. He said they won this year, too. So how can you say they aren't any good? See, they came in and they kicked butt and took names. And they were known, which they got suppressed on it, being the only escort fighter group, World War II, never to have lost a bomber through enemy air to air that they were responsible for. So they're the ones that came out the high scoring group for the last 9 months of World War II in Europe. Wow. So they kicked butt. You know, when Don Barksdale first played for the Lakers, he kicked butt and they hired some more blacks. When Kenny Washington did so much damage playing for the Rams, they started hiring blacks. So, you know, it's like you come in, you get the chance, you do good. Now, when you do good in certain other things like Thurgood Marshall did, you get the opposition saying, we'll get our own colored boy. And they get a Clarence Thomas, handkerchief head house Negro that isn't worth 2 dead flies. With due respect, I suppose.
I hear what
so
you're saying.
You get a Barack Obama to get in there. What did he do? He just dropped the ball all around. We don't need another one in there. First president in years. Okay.
Yeah,
so he grinned at you.
Right. But even Jackie Robinson wasn't the best baseball player, but he made it work. He did. He understood the importance of what he was doing.
Well, see, here's the thing about him being a baseball player. First off, he never played baseball before he got into the professional baseball leagues. He ran track, held a U.S. 100-yard dash and 220-yard dash records. He played football and made All-American out at UCLA. And he refused to move to the back of the bus in Alabama after he had escorted a fellow officer's wife home one evening. He was still armed as officer of the day. He was a captain in uniform, had his .45, and he drew down on those racists in Alabama. And they court-martialed him. So he was acquitted, but he just said, hell with this, I resigned. So he didn't know what to do. They suggested he play in the Negro Leagues. He protested. He'd never played baseball. Said, well, Cap, can't nobody in America run faster than you. And when you get the bat, everybody backs up 50 yards because you can't hit a softball. So the rest is history. And see, what is good about Jackie Robinson is the Dodgers were down by 1 run in the bottom of the ninth in a series where it was 2-1 against them. And if they didn't win, they would have been whipped. And Jackie Robinson stole home base with 2 outs, 2 strikes, 3 balls on the batter, tied the game up. The Dodgers won in multiple extra innings, and they went on to win the pennant for the first time in years. See, that kind of performance is what's necessary. Don Barksdale was a wide receiver in the same football backfield at UCLA with Jackie Robinson. He played for the Lakers, and he became famous for making last-second clutch shots and winning the game for the Lakers. And Kenny Washington was not allowed to play quarterback for the Rams, even though he did for UCLA.
Right.
And he was known for being a pass-throwing option as a running back. So he opened the door, and those brothers kicked butt, took names. That's like Jesse Owens didn't embarrass anybody in the 1936 Olympic Games, you know, and Lewis Hamilton has not embarrassed anybody behind the wheel of a $28 million Formula One Mercedes-Benz, and then he easily acknowledges the fastest driver ever.
Wow.
You know, so these brothers get the door open, they come in, they kick butts. Obama got the door open for him. He got in for 8 years. And what does he have to claim fame? Obamacare, which he didn't even draft. It was Senator Bill Frist from Tennessee, Republican Senator Majority Leader, that did that 14 years ago.
And Blue Cross Blue Shield pulled out of that Obamacare, right? They the major reason why the premiums went up.
Yeah, so what do we have to show these days? And where is the black leadership? None. Like Van Jones, they've got a show for him on CNN now. He was good for what they wanted. But brother, please, in the future, don't act like you are Hillary Clinton's tampon or Kotex anymore, you know?
I feel you on that.
Have some pride in your presentation, brother.
That's right.
If you got the door, now do something with your opportunity to make a difference.
I heard that. What?
So it's, you know, it's like, man, what's the point?
Right.
But, you know, there's a lot on everybody's plate. Trump's scaring the hell out of everybody, but frankly, they need the hell scared out of them.
Well, I'm actually enjoying this. Yeah, I'm actually enjoying this. I call it the Trump guys. I don't call it the zeitgeist. I call it the Trump guys. This Trump era. I'm really enjoying this because of the possibilities it could have for black people as well as for everybody else. You know, it's a time for us to really test ourselves and to really show and prove.
He may be an LBJ, which everybody, you know, LBJ was an old-line redneck racist until he got to be president. And then he became the person who said, I've got a lot to make up. I want my historical reputation to be what it was. His failing, he didn't know much about the military.
Right, the Vietnam.
And those generals screwed him righteously with Vietnam.
You know who you tried to tell him? You know who, out of the one of the generals who actually tried to warn him against Vietnam was Douglas MacArthur of all people. He was listening to MacArthur.
Yes.
Well, that's a warmonger at first. He was a war hawk. You know, you talking about a hawk.
Yeah, but he said, but it was his principle from day one. He had been generalissimo for the Philippine Army after he retired from the U.S. Army. This is for World War II. He'd always said the U.S. should never get involved in an Asian ground war.
You can't win it. Right.
Now, I'll tell you something. Another thing about Obama. What black general in Air Force, Army, or Marine Corps did he not appoint to be chief of somebody's staff? Look at Bush. Look at Bush. He appoints Colin Powell to be chief of staff. Colin Powell becomes Secretary of State. Did we get that out of Obama? No, we get Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State, who was singularly, honest to God, I had a political science major and physics at UCLA. And in all my years, one of the most incompetent bozos to be Secretary of State was Hillary Clinton. She did a miserable ass job of it. So why didn't Obama nominate some American black folk in the armed services, of which we've got a bunch, to be chief of staff for the Army, you know, fleet admiral, or operations chief?
These are very good points.
Why didn't he do that? See, scoundrel didn't even take his opportunity. He's in commander-in-chief. All he had to do was submit to him, and they would have been approved by the Senate. He didn't do that. See, what did he do?
And for all that support we gave him with the black vote, he almost had 100% black vote. each time.
Yeah, and he didn't do anything for us. Hell, George W. Bush appoints Colin Powell for Secretary of State. Condoleezza Rice, is in the administration.
Right.
So what did Obama do? He got some half-stepping Negro for U.S. Attorney General who didn't do anything with his office to speak of to actualize some of the tag-ins being changed for civil rights. He didn't do anything about sicking the Justice Department on some of these local scoundrels like we got here in Memphis.
But what did he say before he took office, or why he was taking off? He said, if America does not deal with race, we're just a nation of cowards. That's what Eric Holder said. I mean,
he didn't know anything about it. He didn't know anything about it. He went to a rich boys high school. He hung around with rich white folk when he was in junior high. He hung around with extremely rich folk in the family. He was
who was the sister-in-law, though? That was the Malone lady that integrated University of Alabama. That was his sister-in-law, right? The sister who integrated University of Alabama.
I don't know about his sister-in-law, but one of his half-sisters, his half-sister and his half-brother are one of the 3 richest people on earth, like he is, thanks to his adoptive daddy's will and trust fund.
This is Holder Obama.
Yeah, and the Sotoro family, that's the one he got adopted into, have been long-term family friends with the Bushes.
I mean, they cousins, from my understanding. They both, the Bushes and Obama, they all related.
The Bushes and the Sotoros, they hung together a lot. And Obama went to school as Barry Sotoro.
But I mean, I was saying like Holder. I thought you were still talking about Holder. I mean, his sister-in-law was Vivian Malone. Was that her name? The one who integrated University of Alabama.
Hey, I don't know. I haven't paid much attention to that. I might know. I forgot.
It's so many like
you
that.
Forget a lot.
Yeah, but you know a lot. You forgot a lot, but you know a lot still. I guess, which is pretty impressive. But I think people need to follow up on that, like the Sotoro and the Bush connection. And there's a lot of things. We like you said, we don't do our research. We're too dependent on likable personalities that we so-called trust, like Walter Winchell or Walter Cronkite, or even Brian Williams.
We don't have Walter Cronkites or Ed Bradleys anymore.
No, we don't. We got Brian Williams, though. We know he's lying. Or we got caught lying.
But the bottom line is I met both of them. If you run into them, or if you had run into them, they were walking encyclopedias. You don't find that now. You talk to these talking heads they've got now, and you ask them anything about these major subjects that they read news about, they don't know anything other than the briefing they get. See, when they invite you on these shows, a lot of times they give you little handout briefs that their staff has done about it, and it's a digest of what's going on. So they're all set up with little 5 and 10 second sound bites that you can read.
That's crazy, but that's the truth. That's why I got a lot of fake news now. Not even educated guessing.
See, our news is 24/7 now. That ought to be maneuver room to put in extensive factual reporting. However, you get 5 seconds worth of factual reporting and 15 minutes worth of blather by some uninformed talking head who is more knowledgeable about his makeup than he is about the circumstances on which he is pontificating for somebody else.
Wow. Well, back.
And then notice the way they present it. You might see a scene where there's something going down, and if you were objective, you would say brave students quickly evacuate the administration building as the gunman shooting several tried to assist police at apprehending the perpetrator. The way they put it, terrified students flee in blind panic. And you say, nobody's running. There's some people walking fast, but, most of them are cool. What about blind panic? But that's the way they put it. Unfortunates, stumble in the way of police, etc., as they try to thwart gunmen. And then they get somebody, I was so terrified, I almost peed my pants, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. When they had to look to find it, and on the scene, you would have found 5 others. No, I didn't panic. I was trying to find something to throw at the fool. But they didn't interview him.
Now, Joe, let me ask you about this. I know you like a military historian as well too, and you told me earlier that the Fort Pillow massacre could have been avoided. Yeah, because we're working on some things to commemorate the memory of the victims of Fort Pillow massacre.
That was a tragic situation. What went down was this: the Confederacy occupied what was Fort Pillow because the way the Mississippi ran around it, it gave them a great opportunity to use it as a choke point to restrict Union naval traffic on the river. Well, when Grant used the Union Navy in collaboration with his ground units to take control of Tennessee, there was no need for Fort Pillow because there was a high bluff right behind it, which allowed a land army to shoot down into Fort Pillow. That's why the Confederates abandoned it. So General Grant ordered the fort closed down since it was useless. Well, unbeknownst to him, there were some Union officers who were smuggling contraband cotton. So they opened the fort back up without permission and put black folk in there so they could smuggle the cotton. So when Nathan Bedford Forrest decides he's going to invest the fort, the problem with it being a fort, trying to defend against something on land, becomes obvious. They shoot down. Well, Nathan Bedford Forrest forces had encountered black soldiers up in the Nashville area and up in northwest Tennessee and got their butts kicked. So he was very irate about ex-slaves doing, and the massa, who at the time had been the wealthiest and largest slave trader in the U.S. South. So there's a great deal to be said that he decided to punish these Negroes for making him look bad, particularly after they ran him out of Franklin, had run him out of Franklin a few weeks before. So he just says they got out of control, but that's the commander's responsibility to make sure his troops don't get out of control. So they did some war crime type stuff on black troops at Fort Pillow. And yet they've got him down here in Medical Center Park with his bones and those of his Stutsy wife, buried under that equestrian statue, lording it over what is now known as Nathan Bedford, not Nathan Bedford,
Health Sciences
Nat
Park.
Turner Park.
Nat Turner Park, the People's Park.
It's Medical Center Park, I think, officially, but that stuff needs to be removed, sent to some Confederate War Museum. They were all traitors. We forgave them. They got amnesty and move on. But in a majority black city, you don't need a statue on Union Avenue prominently displayed in front of the medical center of the biggest slave trader in the South. And if you go downtown on the southeast corner of the street across from the old courthouse, there is a National Register plaque that says, on this spot, Nathan Bedford Forrest and his partner Maples ran the biggest slave dealing business in the old South. Ted Maples is the great-grandfather of somebody named Ray Maples, who used to be president of the Memphis Patrolmen's Association.
Wow.
So yeah.
Way catch it, boy.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff in there. You
That was
see, the
fascinating.
backstories we don't know about.
I was always curious about this Maples because he was like a silent partner or something, like the way it made it sound. We know so much about Ford.
He wasn't the silent partner.
Okay. Wow. So this is why
he did most of the active trading, going around finding the slaves to get brought to the brokerage house, the slave warehouse. I've got a habit of calling 201 Poplar the slave warehouse for Shelby County, Maple Forest operation.
I definitely hear you on that. And Judge, before I let you go, I want to ask you: have you seen the movies Fences and Hidden Figures? Excuse me.
Have I Hidden Figures?
And the movie Fences. Have you seen either of those movies?
No.
Okay, I was going to ask you.
But I have seen the figures of the actual women in Hidden Figures.
Okay.
Let me say this. This is some propaganda for our community. I don't keep up with that kind of movie or TV things, but I'm told that the three women are fine actresses. The only problem I have with it is after I saw the pictures of the actual historic people, I would say it would be like having Rosie O'Donnell play Marilyn Monroe if they did a movie on her.
Wow. Okay.
The three sisters were hot. The three sisters were hot. If you translate from being in the 60s to, early 70s, afro, miniskirt, all of that, they were hot. But that isn't who they got to play the character.
That's fascinating. What do you think that was about?
It's just what they tried. Once again, black folk are used to push an image or a point for mainstream America. And mainstream America, as represented by the Hollywood industry, is anxious to get away from this idea that women are supposed to be beautiful to men. So they have a tendency, when they have black women playing a part, they no longer seek beautiful black women. They trap Denzel into something about colorization, about complexion, but that's not really the issue. But no, that's a problem. So I can remember when it started. I have a connection. One of my aunts was Billie Holiday's roommate for 11 years.
Wow.
My aunt wound up head dietitian at Cedars of Lebanon Hospital in L.A. She wrote a bunch of books of poems, and she died in her mid-90s. But she was very dark skinned. I'm high bright.
Right.
But she was very dark skinned. But she was completely offended by Diana Ross playing Billie Holiday, because Billie Holiday kind of was the Beyonce of her day.
Right.
A pale paper bag brown, fine, keen features. And here they got Diana Ross playing Billie Holiday, and they overdid that drug thing.
Right. Especially the piano man.
Oh my God. Yeah, they put us up for praise, but the praise is damning. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. It's a double-edged sword. It is.
So it's kind of like, okay, what are you doing here? What's your game plan? But like, look at my fabulous fat life or my 600-pound life.
Right.
See, they're trying to normalize that bad health for the American public. And they push imagery like that. I mean, I'm sure they're good people, but, it's like unhealthy. And you turn on the adult stuff, or you go down through Comcast and you get to that adult section in the 500s, and they've got stuff, BBW, big black women, 250 plus, is supposedly erotic porn stars. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. What's going on here? It's crazy.
I hear what you say. That's going to be interesting when people respond to this. It's going to be fascinating.
I mean, but it's a reality. Now, granted,
I hear you.
some sisters got a lot of themselves, out there in their tight gray tights, but with tutus on. But I mean, some brothers like it, but that's not a good image
I've
for our
been seeing
health.
some women now. I've seen some black women hit the gym now. It's a pretty good sign. I've been seeing some since I've been out there. They are taking their health seriously. Especially, I would advise every black person to be in shape when Donald Trump comes into office.
You might have to run. Bag to drag, rap video style of clothing, man. You got it worn down by all your butt cheeks, man. Right. You got to run. It'll fall down to your knees and trip you up, brother.
Yeah, but I'm bad. I mean, your health is your wealth, though. I mean, it's so important. Like, we got to start looking at that. Because you can't talk about being active and doing things if you can't, if you're not taking care of yourself. So that is very important. I hope black folks will wake up. I'm very hopeful because I do see black folks now working out, especially black women. So
I used to play football, so I used to eat as a matter of self-protection.
Right, of course.
But, I have to work on it every now and then and go run a few laps or go jog a mile or two.
Mm-hmm.
I can still make it.
Right.
Sometimes I can't talk, but I acknowledge that ain't an ideal,
No, definitely. I agree. I hear what you're saying because, I mean, there's complications with that, There's definitely complications. So that's so true.
But look what they do with us, man.
Mm-hmm.
We let ourselves be put out there to glorify dysfunction.
Right.
So, come on, brothers. Let's be righteous again,
I definitely hear you, Judge. A lot of people agree with you. Like I said, get a lot of interest and great feedback about, your appearance on our platform, telling people things they forgot they knew. So it's so important to hear this from a trusted elder with one wisdom. You won this. You earned it. You fought for this wisdom. And now you dispense the wisdom to the people. And now a lot of people are receiving it, especially younger people.
Yeah, it's like, what'd you think of Obama's speech? Man, what do I care? I looked at him for 8 years.
It was not impressive, right? I hear you.
Look, man, what did he do? Your actions speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get that together.
I hear you, Judge.
So next time, let your actions speak for you so you can get up there. My fellow Americans, I am so glad to have had this opportunity to have taken advantage of all of the manifest, et cetera, to do things, to correct problems that we've had, et cetera. I try to explain yourself. That's like, okay, explain yourself. The teacher called me at work. What is she talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So I always to you, young man, it's interesting. Somebody, is interested. I run into that a lot. People are interested. It's just we have a dearth of leadership telling folk what to do.
Yes, sir.
And see, to a great extent, you've got in densely populated area in New York. He had an audience there and in Chicago that he could get to that would hear him. And that being the case, he had an independent access to the people. And the newspaper Muhammad was what it was. It was circulated all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the other hand, we had the more prosaic black leadership, and to an extent, the white-dominated media let everybody know about them in essentially a negative fashion, which if you were up on your own game, you could read the link between the lines and understand what was going on. But nowadays, they just simply do a news blackout on that type of person.
Mm-hmm.
So you really don't get to hear anything from them, but you hear a whole lot from the talking heads that's negative about them.
Right.
So it becomes a self-defeating situation where our leadership just has no chance of getting started because you've got social media, and it's very difficult to get started through social media saying anything profound.
Right.
I had no social media until I started up a thing called, just recently, last month, called Judge Joe Brown TV.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the real me. And I've been experimenting with tweeting, and I've gotten on some places, but it's like, what the hell can you say in 140 characters?
Right. I've been learning how to break that down for myself to get in line. You get real creative.
It's like, it's like, what? And then you get all of this craziness that you look at on there. What the hell is this? So I was surprised. I just, let me try this and see if I can get some response out of this.
Mm-hmm.
So I got two people that wanted to be friends, and when I looked at it and went to the sites that they had, it were porn sites.
Wow.
I had to block them. It's like, damn.
Right.
What's going on here? So, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sent some stuff to USA Today. They got it. And then they said, you forwarded your own tweets. I said, yeah, it's me. And they said, real Joe Brown, Judge Joe Brown? I said, yeah, we'll check. And then I sent some stuff to CNN, and they put it on at first and then took it down and sent back, you're not the real Judge Joe Brown. I said, oh, shit. So it's kind of strange, and then, it's a lot of frustrated people. They want to be heard. I can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's what's out there on social media tends to be put out there because it's extreme and it's sort of got a lot of the geek factor. Now, most people don't know what a geek is.
Mm-hmm.
They used to have geek shows at Carney's, and a geek would do stuff like come in and for 50 cents, you can see him bite off a chicken head and eat it. And he'd take a live chicken, you pay your quarter, and he'd take the live chicken that was squawking, bite down on the chicken, crunch his head off, and chew his head up, and eat it and swallow it while the chicken was running around with no head.
Wow. Oh, my God.
That's called being a geek.
Mm-hmm.
Geek out, man. Wow. Oh, really? You geeked out there? Damn.
So it was a geek show going on. This was social media, the geek show.
Wow.
And Judge, you had cut off a little bit earlier. So was you referring, you said Muhammad's speech was referring to Malcolm X in New York?
Yeah, well, see, that time, and I did it when I campaigned and got elected the first 2 times for judge.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a community that you can speak to directly,
mm-hmm.
and you'll get nothing. Nowadays, it's kind of hard to speak to that community because something's happened, and mainstream media has discouraged people from reaching ordinary people except through them. And they've got a bad thing, particularly when it comes to campaigning, which is you have to take out advertisement with them, not so much to get people to respond to your ads, but to keep the media from bad-mouthing you in favor of an opponent who does take out a lot of advertisement.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Like the old days of newspaper wars, it sounds like. Back in the time,
it's like people don't speak to each other. What's happening, Charlie? Oh, hey, Joe, what's going on? Hey, Al, what's happening? Hi, Miss Thompson, you doing all right? They don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
People tweet. You got kids standing 10 feet from each other, and they're sending each other a text instead of speaking directly.
All right. That's true. Wow.
So person-to-person communication is something that we have gotten out of the habit of, and it has cost us dearly.
It has. Well, Judge, I look forward to having that as a topic about next discussion. I want to thank you once again for taking out your time and sharing your insight and wisdom with the masses. In the words of Great Dept, we love humanity. Keep on producing and pushing, and safe travels.
All right, brother. Anything I can do, let me know.
I appreciate it.
I'm just an old man trying to get the word out.
I know you're doing a fine. How can people find out about Judge Joe Brown TV? What do we need to do?
Well, it's a tweet thing. Just look for me. You can look it up. Just hit Judge Joe Brown TV.
Okay, definitely. I definitely tweet.
Now there are two Twitter accounts out there that I have something to do with remotely. At least there are people I know who are putting them out, but I'm the one that's doing Judge Joe Brown TV. I don't tweet all the time, but I might drop something, and the basic thing is, wisdom, learning, discernment. Let's talk about people. Let's talk about government, politics, the economy, education, and things that matter. I'm not going to talk about some stupid act by some celebrity that I don't even know and I don't care much about, I did not grow up that way. See, to me, when I think back on when I grew up, there was an onus attached to the last column on the last page of the last section of the newspaper, which was the gossip column. And it was talked about even by the newspaper is in our gossip column today. Some nefarious accusations by, whatever. And that Ann Landers and her twin sister who ran one too, that kind of stuff combined with soap operas that glorified just sleaze. I was taught to look down on that. And I don't think that kind of way.
Yes, sir. We think people think of the way you think is very unique and is very you, and we appreciate you being you. I'm gonna make sure I send some followers your way on Twitter, let people know that's your handle. That you are the real Judge Joe Brown, bringing the information.
It's at Judge Joe Brown at Judge Joe Brown TV. That's what it is.
Okay, at Judge Joe Brown
TV.
Okay, I'll definitely promote it on my end.
It's a capital J, capital B, and capital T and V.
Okay, we got you. We definitely push it out there.
There are no spaces.
Well, I'll definitely add you as a...
You might just hear a little thing or two, but, it's too short. 140 characters is kind of hard to convey anything, so I say something that's cryptic, but there it is.
But it's from you. It's verified Judge Joe Brown. We All Be News is verified. That's his Twitter handle. That's the official
Judge Joe Brown TV. There are about 5 Judge Joe Browns on there.
Yeah, Judge Joe Brown TV. That's right. I'll make sure I promote it in my networks, and I'll follow you on Twitter. There'll be no problem.
Okay.
Take care, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, big
all right. Yes, sir.